That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the training grounds where the 82nd Airborne Division's K-9 unit assembled at 0600 hours. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at attention in her camouflage utilities, her boots planted firmly in the dew-kissed grass. The air carried the sharp tang of pine from the surrounding woods, mingled with the faint scent of gun oil from the rifles stacked nearby. Her German shepherd, Rex, sat rigidly at her left side, his black and tan coat gleaming under the first rays of light, ears perked forward as if attuned to the unspoken rhythm of the formation. "Unit, attention!" barked Captain Harlan Reed, the company commander, his voice cutting through the crisp morning like a blade. The handlers snapped to, heels together, shoulders squared, chins tucked. Elena felt the familiar pull of the leash in her gloved hand, light but unyielding, a tether to the only partner who never questioned her resolve. Rex's flank rose and fell in steady breaths, his dark eyes scanning the line of soldiers and dogs with quiet vigilance. This was standard procedure, weekly fire response drills for the K-9 teams, designed to simulate urban hazards in deployment zones. The mock structure, a weathered concrete bunker retrofitted with burnable debris, loomed at the edge of the field, its steel door ajar like a challenge. Colonel Marcus Hale, the battalion commander, observed from the observation platform, arms crossed over his pressed uniform, his graying temples catching the light. He was a man of iron protocol, his career etched in deployments from Iraq to Afghanistan, where hesitation meant lives lost. "Handlers, report readiness," Reed called out. "First team, ready," Elena responded crisply, her voice steady among the chorus. She was 28, with 5 years in the unit, her dark hair pulled tight under her patrol cap. Rex had been her shadow since K-9 school at Lackland, their bond forged in endless hours of scent work and obedience drills. He could detect explosives from 50 yards, track a wounded soldier through smoke. But it was his instinct for her, the subtle lean into her leg during briefings, that grounded her in the chaos of service. The drill commenced with precision. A siren wailed, simulating an alert. Teams deployed in pairs, moving toward the structure with controlled urgency. Elena and Rex took point on the left flank, her hand signaling him low as they approached the entrance. Inside, controlled flames licked at stacked pallets, fed by propane lines to mimic a building fire without real danger. Smoke billowed out, thick and acrid, curling into the sky like a warning. "Simulate search and extract," Reed ordered over the radio, his voice crackling in Eleanor's earpiece. "Dogs, seek. Handlers, report contacts." Rex surged forward on command, nose to the ground, his paws padding softly against the gravel. Eleanor followed, her M4 carbine slung across her chest, eyes watering from the haze. The heat pressed against her like a living thing, but protocol held: assess, contain, evacuate if viable. In real ops, K-9s like Rex saved lives by alerting to hidden threats amid infernos, IEDs, insurgents, the unseen. Halfway through, the formation held firm. Other teams cleared their sectors, voices reporting negative over the net. Elena crouched low, Rex weaving through the mock debris, his tail a metronome of focus. Then a shift. The wind gusted, carrying an unnatural sharpness beneath the smoke. Rex stiffened, a low rumble building in his throat, not the trained alert bark, but something primal. "Easy, boy," Elena murmured, her hand steadying his harness. She scanned the interior, the flames dancing higher now, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Protocol dictated withdrawal if conditions escalated, but Rex pulled toward a shadowed corner, his body language screaming urgency. From the platform, Colonel Hale's voice boomed over the loudspeaker. "Team leads, maintain perimeter. No entries beyond visual. Elena hesitated, her pulse quickening. Rex's nose twitched, drawing in scents she couldn't perceive. The wet earthiness of fur, perhaps, or something metallic and out of place. In training, anomalies were scripted, but this felt off. She keyed her radio. "Sergeant Vasquez, possible anomaly in Sector 3, requesting clearance for deeper search." "Negative," Reed replied immediately, his tone clipped. "Fall back to rally point. Drill parameters hold." But Rex didn't yield. He strained against the leash, eyes locked on the corner where a pile of crates smoldered. Eleanor's mind raced through the checklist, false positive. Or had someone overlooked a detail in setup? The unit's K9s were calibrated for precision. Rex had never erred in a live scent trial. The smoke thickened, visibility dropping to arm's length. Around her, handlers pulled their dogs, boots scraping as they retreated. Captain Reed jogged up, face stern under his helmet. "Vasquez, that's an order. Out now." She nodded, but her grip tightened on the leash. Loyalty to chain of command was drilled into her bones. Obey first, question later. Yet Rex's whine cut through the roar of the flames, a sound she'd only heard once before, during a real extraction in Kandahar when he'd found a buried child amid rubble. Colonel Hale descended from the platform, his presence commanding silence as the teams regrouped. Debrief in 10. Secure the site. Elena led Rex back, his reluctance evident in every step. As the fire crew doused the structure, she knelt to calm him, her fingers tracing the tags on his collar. The base hummed with routine. Distant rotor wash from a Black Hawk on final approach, the sharp scent of extinguishant foam mixing with charred wood. That evening, in the dim glow of the barracks, Elena reviewed the drill logs on her tablet. No anomalies noted, but Rex paced at her feet, unsettled, his nose bumping her knee as if urging her to remember. She scratched behind his ears, the gesture automatic, a silent pact. In the world of ranks and routines, trust like theirs was rare, unbreakable, even when orders pulled the other way. Little did she know, the next day's repeat drill would ignite more than flames. What Rex had sensed wasn't part of the script, and ignoring it would soon force a choice no soldier trained for: stand down or step into the fire. The next dawn broke with a relentless humidity, the kind that clung to uniforms like a second skin at Fort Bragg. Elena Vasquez arrived at the training grounds 5 minutes early, as always. Her rucksack slung over one shoulder and Rex at heel. The air hummed with the low chatter of handlers prepping gear, leashes uncoiling, water bowls clinking against concrete. Overnight, a light rain had slicked the paths, turning the earth to a soft mud that sucked at boot treads. Rex's paws left precise prints beside hers, his nose already questing low, as if the previous day's unease lingered in the scent trail. Captain Reed assembled the unit at 0530, his clipboard tucked under arm, face etched with the fatigue of endless oversight. Repeat drill today. Yesterday's anomaly reports flagged. Possible equipment fault in the propane lines. Safety team cleared it, but we're running full protocol. No deviations. Elena nodded in formation. Her position third from the left, Rex's warmth pressing against her leg. Colonel Hale arrived shortly after, stepping from his Humvee with the measured gait of command. His eyes swept the line, pausing briefly on her before settling on the mock structure. The bunker looked unchanged, its concrete facade scarred from years of drills, but fresh scorch marks darkened the doorframe from the prior burn. "Proceed," Hale ordered, his voice carrying the weight of final authority. The siren pierced the quiet once more, and teams fanned out. Eleanor's heart rate steadied to the rhythm of the exercise. Breathe, assess, execute. Rex moved with her, fluid and alert, his harness taut as they approached the entrance. Smoke began to pour out almost immediately, thicker than before, carrying a bitter edge that stung the eyes. "Teams, hold visual on entry," Reed's voice crackled over the radio. Eleanor signaled Rex forward, his body dropping low as he entered the haze. The interior heat built quickly, flames crackling along the pallets with an intensity that pushed the boundaries of simulation. She followed, flashlight beam cutting through the grey, her free hand feeling for the wall's rough texture. Protocol, clear room by room, alert on contact, withdraw on escalation. Rex paused at the same shadowed corner, his stance rigid, a soft chuff escaping his muzzle. Elena knelt, her knee sinking into warm ash. "Seek," she whispered, but he didn't advance. Instead, he circled, nose buried in the debris. The air grew oppressive, the roar of fire drowning out distant commands. Her earpiece buzzed. All teams, monitor heat levels. Fire crew on standby. Then a sharp crack echoed from the corner, a structural groan, unscripted. Sparks flew as a beam sagged, and Rex barked sharply, the trained alert that cut through the din like a warning shot. Elena's pulse spiked. She keyed her radio. "Vasquez here, positive alert in Sector 3, possible hidden element, requesting support." Static. Then read. "Negative. It's residual from yesterday. Pull back now." But the flames surged, fed by a gust through the vents, and the smoke turned black, visibility collapsing. Elena's throat tightened against the burn, her mind flashing to Kandahar. Smoke like this had masked a tripwire once, nearly costing her squad. Rex pulled harder, his whine insistent, body language screaming threat. She scanned the pile, crates stacked haphazardly, one ajar with wires peeking out, not part of the standard setup. Outside, the teams regrouped uneasily, handlers wiping sweat from brows, dogs panting in the open air. Colonel Hale stood with arms folded, watching the structure through binoculars. "Let the controlled burn proceed," he announced over the loudspeaker, his tone brooking no argument. "This is training. Adapt to the environment. No interruptions." Elena's hand hovered over her radio. Duty etched every fiber. Chain of command was the spine of the unit, unbreakable under fire. Yet Rex's loyalty pulled at her, a counterforce honed in countless drills. She glanced back at the entrance, flames now licking the frame, the heat radiating like a furnace door cracked open. If it was nothing, she'd face reprimand, log entry, maybe extra duty. But if Rex was right... "Captain," she said into the mic, voice level despite the tremor in her chest. "Rex is indicating strong. Could be a fault in the wiring, safety risk to the site." "Stand down, Sergeant," Reed replied, sharper now. "Colonel's orders. Rally point." The wind shifted, carrying a faint, acrid whiff, electrical perhaps, or something organic charring beneath the smoke. Elena's grip on the leash whitened her knuckles. Around her, the unit held position, eyes on superiors, the hierarchy a visible web of salutes and nods. Hale turned to Reed, murmuring low, then raised his voice. "Let it burn." That's the lesson. Commitment under duress. Rex strained, his paws digging into the gravel, eyes locked on the building. Elena felt the weight of eyes on her, handlers whispering, a junior specialist glancing her way. The moral fault line cracked open. Obey and let the fire consume whatever lay hidden, or trust the bond that had saved lives before. In the K9 world, dogs didn't lie. They sensed truths buried in chaos. She took a step forward, then halted, breath shallow. The fire crew waited at the perimeter, hoses uncoiled but idle per command. Protocol screamed retreat, but conscience whispered of consequences, of an overlooked spark that could ignite real disaster, not just in training, but in the legacy of the unit. Elena's fingers brushed Rex's ear, feeling the rapid pulse there, mirroring her own. From the platform, Hale's gaze found her again, expectant. "Vasquez, report to line." She turned, leading Rex back, but his resistance was palpable, a low growl rumbling as they distanced from the structure. The drill continued, flames roaring unchecked, the air thick with tension unspoken. As the teams debriefed under the rising sun, Elena's mind replayed the alert, Rex's unerring instinct against the colonel's iron will. In the barracks that afternoon, she logged the incident meticulously. Time, alert type, command response. Rex lay at her feet, head on paws, watching her with unwavering trust. The base stirred with routine, helicopter blades whirring overhead, the distant call of reveille, but inside the rift widened. Tomorrow's full-scale exercise loomed, and with it the inevitability of choice. Orders were clear, but the fire's truth burned hotter, demanding she decide, follow the chain or forge her own path through the blaze. The humid veil of midday hung over Fort Bragg. As the K-9 unit gathered for the full-scale exercise, the training grounds transformed into a simulated forward operating base. Elena Vasquez adjusted her patrol cap, the fabric damp against her forehead, while Rex sat alert beside her, his flanks rising with measured breaths. The air carried the metallic tang of fuel from idling generators and the earthy residue of morning mud baked dry under the sun. Handlers moved with practiced efficiency, checking harnesses, calibrating radios, the chain of command, a visible lattice of nods and clipped reports. Captain Reed stood at the front, his uniform starched despite the heat, briefing the teams on the escalation. A multi-structure fire response, integrating live scent trails and mock casualties. Objective: locate and extract under degraded conditions. Colonel Hale will oversee from command post. Adhere to protocol, no heroics. Report anomalies immediately. His eyes lingered on Elena for a beat longer than usual, the weight of yesterday's exchange unspoken but palpable. Colonel Hale arrived in his tactical vehicle, stepping out with the deliberate poise of a man who had stared down worse than drills. His boots crunched on the gravel as he scanned the formation, the silver eagles on his collar catching the light. "Execute with discipline," he said, voice resonant over the hum of the sight. "This is how we prepare for the real fight, unyielding, precise." Elena felt Rex's subtle shift against her leg, his nose twitching toward the primary structure, a larger mock building rigged with internal compartments and controlled ignition points. The exercise launched at 1100 hours sharp. A klaxon blared and teams deployed in wedges, Elena's pair taking the eastern approach. Smoke erupted from vents, grey plumes twisting skyward, carrying the sharp bite of synthetic accelerant. She signaled Rex low, his paws silent on the packed dirt as they neared the entrance. The heat hit like a wall even from outside, the doorframe glowing faintly from residual warmth. Protocol dictated paired entry. Assess visibility, deploy dog for primary search, maintain radio contact. "Rex, seek," Elena commanded softly, unclipping his leash to allow free movement. He darted inside, body low and purposeful, disappearing into the haze. Her earpiece crackled with updates, other teams clearing perimeters, negative contacts echoing across the net. She followed, flashlight piercing the murk, the concrete floor slick under her boots from condensed vapor. Flames flickered in controlled bursts along the walls, casting erratic shadows that danced like threats. Deep in the central room, Rex's bark cut through the roar, a sharp, insistent alert that halted Elena mid-stride. She crouched, heart steadying to the rhythm of her training. "Contact Sector 2, she reported into the radio, voice level. Dog indicating strong, possible volatile. Rex circled a sealed bulkhead, nose pressed to the seam, his tail rigid. The scent trail was off, not the standard explosive simulant, but something sharper, electrical, laced with an undercurrent of decay that clawed at her senses now that she focused. Static hissed before Reed's response. "Acknowledge, hold position, support en route, do not breach." But the fire intensified, a whoosh from an overhead vent, feeding oxygen to the flames, turning the smoke viscous and black. Elena's eyes watered, her gloved hand tracing the bulkhead's edge. Wires snaked from a hidden panel, jury-rigged and exposed, not part of the approved schematics she'd reviewed pre-drill. Maintenance oversight? Or deliberate? Rex pawed at the base, his whine urgent, body language a mirror to the knot in her gut. From the command post, Hale's voice broadcast over the loudspeaker, overriding the net. All teams maintain commitment. Let the environment test you. Adapt or fail. The words landed like an order etched in stone, the colonel's philosophy on display: push through adversity, no quarter for doubt. Handlers outside shifted uneasily, their dogs sensing the tension, but the hierarchy held, eyes forward, awaiting further direction. Elena's radio buzzed again. Vasquez, confirm hold. Fire crew assessing external. Reed's tone carried an edge, the unspoken reminder of chain integrity. She keyed back. Affirmative, but the indication is escalating. Wires visible, non-standard. A pause stretched, filled only by the crackle of flames. Rex pressed harder, his shoulder bumping her knee, the bond between them a silent anchor in the chaos. In canine doctrine, the dog's alert trumped human hesitation. It was why they trained as pairs, not subordinates. The bulkhead groaned under heat stress, a faint spark arcing from the panel. Elena's training surged: contain the threat, protect the unit. Protocol allowed handler discretion in imminent hazard, but Hale's directive loomed large: let it burn, prove resilience. Around her the structure settled with ominous creaks, the air thickening to a chokehold. She could retreat, log the anomaly for post-exercise review, preserve the order that bound them all. Or trust Rex, breach the unknown, risk the reprimand that could shadow her career. Footsteps echoed from the entrance. Two handlers arriving with extinguishers, faces masked against the smoke. "Sergeant!" one called, voice muffled. Eleanor rose, decision crystallizing in the heat. "Cover me," she said, drawing her multi-tool. Rex stayed at the bulkhead, alert, unwavering. With a steady hand, she pried the panel loose, revealing a cluster of makeshift fuses tied to a battery pack. Faulty wiring from yesterday's setup, now a live hazard, inches from ignition. "Sergeant Vasquez, stand down!" Reed's voice exploded over the radio, laced with command authority, but she isolated the circuit, clipping the leads with precision born of endless quals. Sparks died, the immediate threat neutralized. Rex sat back on command, his role complete, while the handlers doused the local flames. Elena's pulse thrummed, the act of defiance small but seismic, a breach in the seamless flow of orders. Outside, the exercise ground to a halt as teams extracted, the siren winding down to silence. Colonel Hale strode forward from the post, his expression a mask of controlled intensity, flanked by Reed and the safety officer. Witnesses multiplied, handlers clustering, radios relaying the breach, the unit's eyes turning to the eastern structure where smoke still curled lazily. "Report!" Hale demanded, stopping short of the door, his gaze locking on Eleanor as she emerged, Rex at heel, both streaked with soot. She saluted crisply, chest tight under scrutiny. "Anomaly confirmed, sir. Faulty wiring, potential for uncontrolled spread. Neutralized per imminent hazard protocol." The words hung in the humid air, the base's rhythm pausing, distant vehicle engines idling, a Black Hawk's rotors slowing on the pad, the collective breath of the formation. Hale's jaw tightened, the institutional machine whirring to life, investigation inevitable, logs to be pulled, statements taken. Reed stepped in, voice low. "That was not cleared, Sergeant." But Elena met their eyes, Rex's steady presence at her side, a testament to the choice. The moral tension rippled outward. From individual act to unit reckoning, the fire's truth now exposed under the unrelenting sun. As the debrief assembled in the shade of the command tent, whispers circulated, loyalty tested, conscience laid bare. Elena scratched Rex's ear absently, feeling the quiet shift. What began as routine now demanded accountability, the chain of command bending under the weight of one dog's unerring nose. "Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The command tent's canvas walls fluttered in the midday breeze, carrying the faint scent of diesel from nearby vehicles and the lingering char of the extinguished fire. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at ease in the center of the space, her uniform streaked with soot that dusted her sleeves like ash from a battlefield. Rex lay at her feet, his chest rising steadily, one ear cocked toward the murmur of voices around the folding table. The air inside was thick, humid, laced with the sharp tang of coffee from a percolator on the sideboard, and the metallic click of a recorder being activated. Colonel Marcus Hale presided at the head, his chair creaking under his weight as he leaned forward, elbows on the scarred wood. Flanking him were Captain Reed, notebook open, and Major Lydia Torres, the battalion's executive officer, her glasses perched low on her nose as she reviewed a stack of schematics. A half-dozen handlers and the safety officer filled the benches, their postures rigid, eyes fixed on the floor or the walls adorned with faded unit patches. The debrief had stretched into an informal inquiry, the line between exercise review and investigation blurring under Hale's unyielding gaze. "Vasquez," Hale began, his voice low and measured like the rumble of distant thunder. "Walk us through your actions from the alert, step by step." Elena straightened, her hands clasped behind her back, fingers interlacing to steady the faint tremor. "Sir, at 11:12 hours, Rex indicated on the bulkhead in Sector 2, visual confirmation of non-standard wiring, exposed leads connected to a secondary battery. Heat levels were rising with arcing observed, per FM 319. 17 K9 handler discretion applies in cases of imminent hazard to personnel or assets. I isolated the circuit to prevent potential escalation." Reed shifted, his pen tapping once against the page. "Discretion, Sergeant. That section requires immediate radio report and superior clearance before intervention. You breached without it." The tent fell silent save for the distant thump of a basketball on the quad and Rex's soft huff as he sensed her tension. Elena met Reed's eyes briefly, then returned to Hale. "The breach was minimal, sir. Clipping the leads took seconds. Full extraction followed." Torres adjusted her glasses, flipping to a photo printout of the panel, grainy from a handler's quick snap. "The safety team confirms it was a maintenance oversight, left over from yesterday's propane tie-in, not rated for repeated exposure. Could have sparked a flashover if the fire hit it right." She paused, her tone clinical. "Lucky catch, but protocol exists for a reason. Unilateral actions risk the team." Hale's fingers drummed the table, a rhythmic tap that echoed the pulse in Elena's temples. He was a veteran of Fallujah, where split-second calls saved platoons, but his doctrine was ironclad. Chain of command preserved lives by preventing chaos. "This unit operates on trust in the system, Sergeant. Your dog is exceptional. Logs show Rex at 98% accuracy in trials, but he's not the commander. You are, and you chose to override." Murmurs rippled from the benches, a handler nodding subtly, another glancing at his boots. Eleanor felt the weight of their scrutiny, the invisible threads of loyalty straining. Rex nudged her calf, his nose cool against the fabric of her pants, a quiet reminder of the bond that had driven her forward. In K9 training, handlers learned to read their partners like extensions of self. Rex's alert wasn't a suggestion. It was certainty, honed in scent labs, where false positives were weeded out through repetition. "Sir," she replied, voice even. The indication was clear. Delaying could have compromised the structure and the exercise. Respectfully, the risk was to the unit's safety. Hale's eyes narrowed, the lines around them deepening. He stood, pacing the tent's confines, his boots scuffing the packed dirt floor. Outside, the sun beat down, casting harsh shadows through the flap, where a cluster of off-duty soldiers had gathered, drawn by the halted drill. Word spread fast on base, radios buzzing with fragments, whispers of the handler who went in anyway. The public reckoning was underway, the act no longer contained to smoke and flames. "Respectfully noted," Hale said, stopping to face her, "but this sets a precedent. If every soldier interprets imminent hazard their way, we fracture. I'll convene a formal board, JAG review by 1600. Until then, restricted to quarters. Hand over your sidearm to Captain Reed." Eleanor's stomach tightened, but she unholstered her beretta with steady hands, presenting it butt first. Reed accepted it without a word, the exchange a ritual of accountability. Rex rose as she turned to leave, padding silently beside her, his leash a loose loop in her grip. The handlers parted as she passed, one murmuring, "Solid call, Sarge," under his breath, another avoiding her gaze. The tent flap swung shut behind her, muffling Hale's voice as he directed Torres to pull maintenance logs. The walk to barracks felt endless, the gravel path crunching underfoot. Rex's paws leaving faint prints in the dust. Overhead, a Chinook's rotors thrummed, stirring the air into eddies that carried the scent of pine and distant chow hall grease. Elena's mind replayed the panel. The wire's dull gleam, the spark's brief flare. Like a loop in after-action review. Defiance wasn't her nature. She'd saluted through sandstorms in Helmand, followed orders that twisted the gut. But Rex had changed that equation years ago, in a live op where his nose found a hidden cache amid a market blast, saving her fire team from ambush. In her room she secured Rex's harness, filling his bowl with fresh water that sloshed softly. The space was sparse, bunk neatly made, a single photo of her and Rex at graduation taped to the locker, his tongue lolling in rare play. She sat on the edge of the mattress, elbows on knees, staring at the concrete floor. The board loomed, statements, cross-examinations, the potential stain on her record. A formal reprimand could sideline her from deployments, fracture the trust she'd built. Yet the alternative haunted her, letting the fire burn unchecked whatever truth lay buried. A knock echoed. Private Lang, a junior handler, slipping in with a nod. "Heard about the board, Sarge, the guys. We're backing you. Rex doesn't miss." He hesitated, then added, "Colonel's pushing hard, though. Says it's about discipline." Elena managed a tight smile, scratching Rex's ruff as he leaned into her. "Discipline's what keeps us alive, Private, but so does listening when it counts." Lang saluted and left. The door clicking shut, leaving the room to settle into quiet. Outside, the base pulsed on. Réveillé fading into afternoon routines, the hum of life in rigid order. By evening, the inquiry's ripples reached wider. A base newsletter pinged on her tablet, brief, factual. K9 drill anomaly under review. Handler commended for alert pending protocol assessment. Comments flooded the internal forum. Anonymized but pointed. Support from dog teams. Caution from officers. Elena powered it down, turning to Rex, who watched her with unwavering eyes. The moral fault line had widened into a chasm, her choice echoing through the ranks, demanding the institution confront its own rigid edges. As night fell, the barracks lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the quad. Elena lay awake, the distant call of a night bird mixing with Rex's even breathing. Tomorrow's board would test more than her actions. It would probe the balance between loyalty to orders and the quiet courage of conscience, the fire's lesson burning brighter in the dark. The fluorescent hum of the JAG office cut through the late afternoon stillness, casting a sterile glow over the polished oak table where Sergeant Elena Vasquez sat, her posture unyielding despite the hours ticking toward evening. Rex was confined to the handler kennels for the duration, a protocol stipulation that left her hands empty, fingers drumming faintly against her knee under the table. The air conditioner wheezed softly, circulating the faint scent of printer ink and stale briefing paper, while outside the window, the Fort Bragg parade ground lay empty, flags snapping in the wind like distant salutes. Major Lydia Torres chaired the board, her uniform crisp, a stack of affidavits arrayed before her like evidence in a court-martial. Flanking her were Colonel Hale, his expression a mask of procedural neutrality, and Lieutenant Colonel David Klein, the division's legal advisor, his pen poised over a legal pad. Captain Reed occupied the observer's seat, notebook closed, arms crossed. 2 additional officers, neutral evaluators from the adjacent battalion, sat at the ends, their faces impassive, the room's tension thick as the smoke from yesterday's drill. "Vasquez," Torres began, her voice even, consulting the recorder's red light. "This hearing reviews your actions during Exercise Firehawk, 1100 hours, 14 September. State your understanding of the events for the record." Elena leaned forward slightly, her voice steady, honed by years of after-action reports. "Ma'am, during the search phase, Rex alerted on a bulkhead in Sector 2. Inspection revealed unauthorized wiring, exposed connections from prior setup, posing an electrical hazard amid active flames. I reported the anomaly twice via radio. With arcing observed and no immediate support, I exercised handler discretion under FM 319-17 to isolate the circuit, preventing potential flashover. Extraction followed without incident to personnel or assets." Klein nodded, flipping through logs. "The manual grants discretion in imminent threats, yes, but Colonel Hale's standing order was to let the burn proceed as simulation. Your intervention halted the exercise prematurely. Witnesses confirm you acted alone, without clearance." The room absorbed the words, the clock on the wall ticking methodically, 14:30 hours now, the base outside shifting to evening routines. Mess hall lines forming, distant laughter from off-duty troops. Elena felt the isolation keenly, Rex's absence a void where his steady flank would have been. "Sir, the hazard was real. Maintenance logs, as confirmed by the safety officer, show the wiring was overlooked post-yesterday's drill. Rex's alert aligned with visual evidence. Delaying risked the structure's integrity and any embedded teams." Hale interjected, his tone measured but firm, leaning back in his chair with the authority of command. "Sergeant, your record is exemplary. Kandahar commendation, top quals in scent work. But this wasn't a live op. It was training designed to build resilience under controlled duress. By overriding, you undermined the chain. What if every handler second-guessed orders? We lose cohesion." Murmurs from the evaluators, subtle shifts in posture. Torres raised a hand, directing attention to a projected schematic on the wall screen. The bulkhead panel, wires circled in red. "Technical analysis supports your assessment. The setup was substandard, a Category 2 fault per safety regs. Had it ignited, it could have escalated beyond simulation, endangering the unit." She paused, eyes on Elena. "Yet protocol requires escalation through command first. Your call saved potential damage, but at the cost of discipline." Elena's jaw tightened imperceptibly, the room's air growing heavier as the hearing delved into witness statements. Reed was called forward first, his testimony concise. "Sergeant Vasquez reported the alert, but my directive was to hold. The colonel's order stood, adapt to the environment. Her breach was unauthorized, though effective." He glanced at Hale, the hierarchy's subtle pull evident in his hesitation. Private Lang followed, the junior handler's uniform still bearing faint drill dust. "Ma'am, sirs, I was on support. Saw the sparks myself from the entry. Rex was locked on it. Dog's nose doesn't lie. Sergeant made the right call to clip it." His words hung, a ripple of support from the underranks, but Klein pressed. "And if it was a false positive, you'd endorse overriding every time?" "No, sir," Lang replied, saluting as he stepped back. "But in that moment, with the fire building, yeah." The board recessed briefly at 15:30, officers filing out for consultation, leaving Elena alone with the evaluator from the 1st Brigade. He offered a nod, voice low. "Tough spot, Sergeant." K9 bonds complicate things. Seen it in my rotations. Hang tight. The door clicked shut, and she exhaled, staring at the table's grain, tracing mental paths back to the smoke-filled room. Rex's insistent paw against the bulkhead. Loyalty to him wasn't defiance. It was extension of duty, the unspoken pact that defined their pair. Resuming at 1600, Torres announced the findings, her tone formal as she read from a prepared sheet. The board commends Sergeant Vasquez for hazard identification and neutralization, averting a credible risk. However, procedural violation is noted. Failure to await clearance constitutes a minor infraction under Article 92, UCMJ. Recommendation: formal counseling, no loss of rank or privileges, full reinstatement pending safety protocol overhaul. Hale's expression remained stoic, but a flicker crossed his features, relief or concession. Understood, Major. The unit will implement immediate reviews on drill setups. Vasquez, report to kennels for Rex, then Captain Reed for counseling at 1800. Elena saluted sharply, the room's tension easing like smoke dissipating. Yes, sir. As she exited, the evaluators murmured approvals, Reed trailing with a curt, good work, but next time radio first. Outside, the sun dipped low, painting the quad in amber, the air cooler now with the scent of impending rain. She quickened her pace to the kennels, where Rex greeted her with a muffled woof through the chain link, tail thumping against the concrete floor. Releasing him, she clipped the leash, his warmth immediate against her leg as they walked the perimeter path. The bass thrummed with end-of-day cadence, boots marching in the distance, a howitzer battery's low rumble from the artillery range. Whispers followed her, handlers nodding from the chow line, a group of specialists pausing mid-conversation. The hearing's outcome spread via the internal net, anonymized posts praising the K9 save, others debating the balance of orders and instinct. In the counseling session that evening, Reed's office was dim, lit by a desk lamp that cast long shadows over unit photos, deployments in dusty waddies, dogs mid-alert under floodlights. He poured coffee, black and steaming, the aroma cutting the tension. Sit, Sergeant. This isn't punishment, it's perspective. Colonel Hale's pushing reforms, mandatory pre-drill wiring checks, expanded K9 discretion clauses in the SOP. Your actions sparked it. Elena accepted the mug, the heat grounding her. Understood, sir. Just doing what Rex trained for. He nodded, leaning back. That's the core. Trust in the pair. But the chain keeps us whole. You've got mentors now. Use them. The session ended with a handshake, Reed's grip firm, the rift mending in quiet acknowledgement. By nightfall, as rain pattered against the barracks window, Elena reviewed the updated logs on her tablet. Rex curled at the bunk's foot. The incident had transcended personal choice, rippling into institutional quietude, memos circulating on handler autonomy, Hale's signature on the reforms. Her defiance, born of conscience, had bent the rigid frame without breaking it, forging a legacy in the subtle shifts of protocol. The fire's echo lingered, a testament to loyalty's quiet power, as the base settled into watchful peace. The rain had cleared by dawn, leaving the Fort Bragg training grounds slick and reflective under a pale sky, puddles mirroring the low clouds like scattered camouflage nets. Sergeant Elena Vasquez walked the perimeter fence with Rex at heel, his paws splashing softly in the shallow water. The leash a loose tether in her gloved hand. The air held a crisp edge, carrying the scent of wet pine and distant diesel from the motor pool, where mechanics tested engines with rhythmic coughs. It was Zo 5:30 hours, and the base stirred with the quiet discipline of a new day. Boots thudding on wet concrete, the faint crackle of radios tuning in for morning briefings. Overnight, the reforms had taken root, a battalion-wide memo signed by Colonel Hale, mandating dual inspect tech checks on all drill rigs and a revised appendix to the K9 SOP granting handlers expanded latitude for K9 alerts in simulated hazards. Elena had read it twice in the dim light of her barracks, Rex's head resting on her boot, his breathing a steady counterpoint to her racing thoughts. The words were procedural, dry, official, but they carried the weight of concession, a subtle bend in the iron spine of command. Captain Reed summoned her to the company office at 600, the door ajar to reveal a space cluttered with file cabinets and a whiteboard scrawled with rotation schedules. He stood behind his desk, uniform sleeves rolled to the elbows, a fresh pot of coffee steaming on the hot plate. "Vasquez, sit! The colonel's called a unit stand down this morning, full assembly at 800. You're to brief the handlers on the incident and the updates." She nodded, settling into the metal chair, its legs scraping faintly on the linoleum. Rex lay at her feet, nose twitching toward the under-desk vent. "Sir, the board cleared it as counselling only. Is this public?" Reed poured 2 mugs, the liquid glugging dark and aromatic, handing her one with a nod. "Not punishment, integration. Hale wants transparency. Words out. The division commander's office pinged last night after the newsletter hit. They're framing it as a safety win, but eyes are on us. Your call's the pivot." The assembly convened under the overhang of the armory. The K9 unit forming 2 ranks on the damp grass, dogs sitting in precise alignment, their harnesses jingling softly in the breeze. Over 50 handlers and support staff turned out, uniforms damp at the hems, faces a mix of curiosity and guarded respect. Colonel Hale arrived on foot, his stride purposeful, Major Torres at his side with a tablet displaying the memo. The air hummed with anticipation, undercut by the low whine of a generator powering the PA system. Hale stepped to the makeshift podium, a crate draped in a unit flag, his voice projecting clear over the murmur. "At ease. This morning we address the Firehawk anomaly. Safety is non-negotiable. Oversights erode trust. Sergeant Vasquez identified a hazard during the exercise, faulty wiring that could have compromised the simulation. Her intervention, though outside cleared protocol, prevented escalation. The JAG board reviewed. Commendation for the catch, counselling for the breach." Eyes turned to Elena, standing at the formation's edge with Rex, her posture straight. The weight of scrutiny, like a rucksack's straps digging in. Whispers rippled, handlers exchanging glances, a specialist in the back row nodding subtly. Hale continued, gesturing to Torres, who projected the schematic. The bulkhead panel, wires highlighted, Rex's alert position marked. "Effective immediately. We're overhauling drill prep, dual verifications on all electricals, K9 teams. Your partner's indications now carry presumptive authority in hazard zones. Report and act with post-review." Torres fielded the first question, a handler raising his hand. "Ma'am, does this mean we override on alert alone?" She adjusted her glasses, voice steady. "No, escalate via radio first, but discretion applies if delay risks assets. It's calibrated trust, not carte blanche." Elena felt Rex's flank press against her leg, his calm, an anchor amid the shifting dynamics. The assembly absorbed the changes, the hierarchy flexing without fracturing, Hale's authority intact, but yielding to the evidence of one dog's nose. As the colonel rapped, calling for questions, a senior handler spoke up. "Sir, what about accountability for the oversight? Maintenance signed off." Hale's jaw set briefly, the wind tugging at his cap. "Under review, no scapegoats, systemic fix. That's the lesson. Vigilance from all links in the chain." Dismissed at 0830, the unit dispersed with a buzz. Leashes snapping, boots squelching on the path to the kennels. Elena led Rex toward the training pads, where junior handlers clustered, Private Lang among them, his face alight. "Sarge, that was solid. The memo's got your fingerprints, expanded discretion. Rex just got a promotion. She scratched behind Rex's ears, the fur damp and warm, his tail thumping once against her boot. Not about credit, Private. It's about the pair working right. Next drill, we test it clean. By midday, the ripple extended beyond the battalion. A division-level briefing circulated via secure net, anonymized but pointed. K9 alert averts drill hazard, protocol refinements implemented. Off-base, a military blog picked it up, veteran-run, factual, headlining Fort Bragg Handlers Instinct Saves Training Day. No names, per OPSEC, but the details matched, the smoke, the alert, the clip of wires. Comments flooded in, measured praise from former K9 techs, debates on command flexibility echoing through retired networks. In the chow hall at 1200, Elena queued with her tray, steam rising from mashed potatoes, the clatter of utensils a familiar cadence. Conversations hushed as she passed, a major from logistics nodding, "Heard about your team. Good work keeping it tight." She returned the salute, plate heavy in her hands, the public layer settling like dew on her shoulders. Rex waited outside, tied to a post, his eyes tracking her through the glass, unwavering. Afternoon brought a surprise. Colonel Hale's aide appeared at the handler bays, tablet in hand. "Sergeant, the Colonel's requesting your input on the SOP draft. 1400, his office." Elena arrived punctually. Rex kennelled per protocol. The Colonel's door opened to a space lined with deployment maps and a single K9 photo, his own from 09, a Belgian Malinois mid-search. Hale gestured to the chair opposite his desk, the wood polished from years of salutes. "Vasquez, sit. The reforms are yours to shape, addendums on K9 Qs, integration with safety checks." His tone was direct. No warmth but no edge. The institutional gears turning. She outlined adjustments, mandatory scent calibration pre-drill, handler logs for alerts, bridging dog instinct with command flow. He nodded, jotting notes, the pen scratching like radio static. "You're a handler first, but this makes you more," he said finally, capping the pen. "The unit watches. Lead by example, discipline with the new latitude." The meeting ended with a handshake, his grip firm, the rift sealed in mutual respect. As evening fell, the base illuminated in sodium glow, Elena walked Rex along the wooded trail, the path crunching underfoot, leaves rustling overhead. The day's reckoning had transformed her act from defiance to doctrine, ripples touching careers beyond her own, juniors inspired, officers recalibrating. Rex trotted ahead, nose to the ground, sensing paths unseen. The fire's legacy burned steady now, a quiet reform in the heart of rigid order, her conscience the spark that lit the way. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. Weeks later, the Fort Bragg training grounds bore the marks of renewal. The mock structures retrofitted with gleaming new panels and reinforced vents that gleamed under the autumn sun. Sergeant Elena Vasquez led her team through a revised drill at 0700 hours. The air crisp with the bite of falling leaves and the faint ozone of fresh wiring. Rex moved at her side, his harness adjusted for the updated protocols, nose questing low over the dew-slick grass as handlers fanned out in precise formation. The hum of generators underscored the scene, a steady pulse syncing with the clipped reports over the radio net. Captain Reed observed from the sideline, his clipboard replaced by a tablet displaying real-time sensor feeds, a direct outcome of the reforms. "Teams, initiate search phase," he called, voice carrying clear over the simulated klaxon. No longer was the exercise a test of blind endurance. Now, it integrated K9 alerts as primary triggers, with command loops shortened to seconds. Eleanor signaled Rex forward, his paws padding rhythmically against the concrete approach, the bond between them a seamless extension of the unit's evolving doctrine. Inside the structure, smoke curled in controlled wisps, the flames banked low to mimic urban containment without overwhelm. Rex paused at a designated compartment, his alert bark sharp and affirmative, tail rigid. Elena keyed her radio without hesitation. "Vasquez, positive on Sector 1. Embedded simulant confirmed." Support arrived in under a minute. 2 handlers with tools, their movements fluid, no override needed. The extraction proceeded like clockwork, the hazard neutralized before escalation, the team's cohesion palpable in every nod and handoff. Debrief followed under the armory overhang. The group clustered around a folding table laden with water bottles and printouts of the new SOP. Colonel Hale joined midway, his presence drawing the handlers to attention, boots shifting on the gravel. "At ease," he said, scanning the faces, his grey eyes lingering on Elena. "Metrics from this run, 0 deviations, full integration, the changes hold." It was his first public acknowledgement since the hearing, delivered with the restraint of command, but the subtext rang clear. The system's adaptation, born from one breach, now fortified. Eleanor stood at the table's edge, Rex sitting alert beside her, his flank warm against her leg. "Sir," the discretion clause streamlined response. Rex's cue synced with visuals. No lag. Hale nodded, a faint crease at his mouth suggesting approval. Major Torres, tablet in hand, added metrics. Alert accuracy up 15% across rotations, maintenance faults down to near 0 with dual checks. The data spoke volumes, transforming Elena's act from infraction to inflection point, her input on the SOP draft now embedded in battalion-wide training modules. Word of the overhaul spread methodically, first through division channels, a secure bulletin praising the enhanced K9 integration model, then rippling to joint base networks. Veteran handlers from other posts requested briefings, their emails pinging Elena's inbox. "Saw the Fort Bragg update. How's the dog factor in overrides?" She responded in kind, professional and concise, mentoring from afar without fanfare. Private Lang, once tentative, now led junior pairs in scent quals, citing her log entries as reference. "Sarge showed us the line," he'd say during breaks, his voice carrying over the clang of kennel gates, inspiring a quiet emulation among the ranks. By month's end, the legacy crystallized in subtle shifts. Colonel Hale nominated the unit for a Safety Excellence Award, the citation veiled but pointed. Innovative protocol refinement, averting simulated risks, crediting handler vigilance. Elena received no medal, discipline favored understatement, but her file noted the contribution, a line that could anchor future commands. In quiet moments, like evening walks along the wooded trails where pine needles crunched underfoot and Rex's breath fogged the cooling air, she felt the transformation settle. No longer just a handler, she embodied the balance, obedience tempered by conscience, the chain flexible yet unbroken. One crisp afternoon, Hale summoned her to his office again. The door opened to reveal maps updated with fresh deployments, a new K9 handler manual open on his desk. "Vasquez," he began, gesturing to the chair, "the division commander's reviewing our model for wider rollout. Your perspective, on the ground with the dog, shaped it. Draft a section on pair dynamics for the field guide." His tone held no apology for the past tension, only the forward march of institution, but his eyes conveyed respect earned in fire and review. She sat, outlining cues and bonds with the precision of her training logs, Rex waiting outside the door, his muffled huff a familiar echo. The session stretched, ideas flowing into annotations, how a dog's lean or whine bridged human gaps, turning instinct into actionable intel. As she left, Hale's voice followed, "You've set a standard. The unit's stronger for it." The words landed like a salute held long, acknowledgement of moral strength rippling through the hierarchy. That evening, in the barracks glow of her tablet, Elena reviewed deployment rotations. Her team slotted for a joint exercise with Special Forces K9s, the reforms tagged as key asset. Rex curled at her feet, head on paws, eyes half closed in contentment. The base outside hummed with routine, rotor wash from a night flight, the distant bark of another handler's partner, the quiet weave of loyalty sustaining it all. Her defiance had ignited not destruction, but quiet reform, a legacy etched in protocols and trust, where orders and conscience aligned under disciplined skies. In the months that followed, Elena Vasquez became a quiet symbol, her story whispered in handler schools, from Lackland to Bragg, a case study in integrity's cost and yield. Rex remained her anchor, their bond the unyielding core amid change, proving that true courage lay not in the blaze, but in the steady light it cast on the path ahead. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of Let It Burn, the Colonel ordered, but she ran into the building without waiting. See you in the next one.